So I'm Fiona Rossette, just speaking to you from Paris, France, where I teach at the University of Paris, Nanterre, and I'm responsible for an international, an intercultural management program, and it's the students of this program who participated in the exchange we're going to be talking about today.
I'm John Chapin. I teach at Penn State. I'm at the Beaver campus. Penn State actually has 21 campuses, and I think one of the interesting things about our exchange is that my course was undergraduates, Penn State students, multi-campus, online, asynchronous. So typically I had 15 students at 4 Penn State campuses. When word of mouth of this exchange got around, I ended up with about 30 students from 7 Penn State campuses. So that was something that I think was unique about this particular exchange. I'm going to switch over to a screen share and just walk through a little bit of the logistics in terms of setting this up. This was a first-time experience for both of us. And before we began, I attended a COIL conference 2 years previous to this exchange beginning. What I appreciated most about the people that presented was just showing everything, warts and all, what went wrong, and the consistent message that I got from everybody was keep it simple. And so we really did keep that in mind. And I think that part we accomplished, so we anticipated some technical problems. We had some technical problems, but as much as we possibly could, we just kept everything very simple. So the first solution was, how are we getting all these students to work together? And something that I experimented with an administrator from Nanterre that I met in New York for the COIL conference was adding people to Canvas, which is what Penn State uses as a course management system. I was able to add an administrator and an IT person in what we call Friends of Penn State accounts. And they had complete access to Canvas, which was perfect. And so in the spirit of keeping things simple, we kept all of the course materials within Canvas, within the course management system. Once we added the students, we created a module here. And for each one of us, we created a welcome video for the other students. And so this is the video of myself. Here's what my house looks like when I don't have the virtual background running. And then Fiona created a video for the Penn State students as well. Basic instructions as far as using Canvas and the course management system and the Penn State system. The other thing that I wasn't anticipating is that the Nanterre students really didn't have any kind of exposure to online learning. And so this is something that's common within Penn State and within a lot of American universities. And so in addition to learning the subject area, writing for the web, they also had the challenge of adapting to Canvas and how to submit something to a message board and respond to something. And, so that was just an extra piece. And so the pages I'm scrolling through right now, these were materials on writing for the web specifically. The American students had gone through this, and so this was a part of the course already. It was a course on writing for the web, so adapting your writing. And the assignment that we decided to share was a feature writing assignment. So we had the students pair up. We used WhatsApp. On the American end, that was a technical issue that I was not expecting. So the American students weren't familiar with WhatsApp, which was much more popular in France. And even simple things like adding their partners. I think because the telephone numbers had more digits than they were used to, some of the Penn State students couldn't figure out how to add people. And so in some cases, there was a delay in getting the students to work together. And so the concept of this project was to pair the students. Because my class doubled, we ended up with 2 Penn State students for each Nanterre student. They were to have an initial discussion, just a face-to-face chat to get to know each other, and then have another in-depth discussion on a particular topic that they found of interest for their partner, and then write the story on their partner. In terms of lessons learned, some of the things, you know, a difference between partnering with master's students in Paris and undergraduate students in the US. Some of the things that would typically happen when you're working on a group project with students in the U.S. is that some people sort of hang back and they don't do their share of the work. Some of the American students waited until the last minute, and so they saw the deadline for the feature story and didn't reach out to communicate, you know, for the first week. And so there were some adaptations that had to take place there. And then as far as getting ready, this is thankfully when we decided that we needed to meet face to face, and we had a little bit of technological issues of our own. Both the Penn State email servers and the Nanterre servers were seeing our emails to each other as junk. And so I would write a message. I wouldn't get a response for a week, and it's like, oh, hey, what's going on? Why aren't they? Why isn't she responding to this? And things had been going to junk filters, and so we learned pretty quickly that our communication through WhatsApp was better than using traditional email. And then once we met face to face, and thankfully we decided it was better for me to go to Paris than for Fiona to come to Pittsburgh. And so this is our first face-to-face meeting. And once we did that, things went much more smoothly. So built into the project was these feature stories. And so you have this link in the description for our session. And so you're welcome to look at these. This is the homepage here. So here's some of our awesome students and the photos that were included as part of their stories that they wrote about each other. And so there are links here, the stories that were written by the students from Nanterre and the stories that were written by the Penn State students. And then the last thing that I'll talk about is we built into this using some of the metrics provided by COIL, a built-in assessment. And actually, Fiona, I'll continue to screen share here if you want me to show something in particular, but I'll let you talk about the assessment piece.
Okay, so just to specify a couple of things about what John just introduced, there was a certain asymmetry between the setup here in France and the setup in the States, so with Penn State Beaver. As John said, undergraduates on the American side, and on this side of the Atlantic, graduate students. So that was one asymmetry. And another aspect was that well, John's students it was an online course, and so it was already a distance learning setup. That you mentioned this, John, but my students were not used to this, and so we had, I think, an interesting point to already underline, and is perhaps unique in this experience, was the fact that we were putting things together that didn't necessarily go on paper together, but in fact worked really well. So in terms of the assessment, we had integrated into the exchange several aspects. The students had 3 weeks to work together, to collaborate, and to write the feature articles that John just explained to you all. And then they had 1 week of critiquing. Students critiqued one another's stories from both countries. They then provided a written reflection on the feedback that they had received, and then they did video reflections on the exchange itself. So that's how and these video reflections, the objectives was specified that it was about perspective taking. So that was the assessment material. I don't know if, John, I already go into what we can deduce from the perspective taking and the assessment we got. is it the moment to do that?
One of the things that I noticed even between these videos, so we asked students to submit, I called them selfie videos, to just reflect on perspective taking. So they had a specific prompt to discuss perspective taking. One of the first things that I noticed is that the French students dressed for a presentation, so they were dressed formally and presented themselves professionally. Some of the Americans shot theirs in their car. One was shot, the TV was still on with the football game running, and you could see the reflection of the game in the window. So I won't play all of this first one. We have 5 minutes from the Nanterre students and 10 minutes from the Penn State students, because there were twice as many Penn State students. All the Nanterre students consented to have their videos shared. All of the American students did not. So these are just videos that the students consented. So I'll just play 5 minutes of the American video, and then I'll play the 5 minutes of the Nanterre video.
Especially with how divisive many of the cultures within the United States are nowadays, having the opportunity to interact with someone else from another culture, seeing what they're all about compared to us, I think it's a very important thing. So when reflecting on the global learning experience, I would say that the most I got out of it was just being able to understand the difference between the United States and international culture, specifically French culture. I think it's very interesting to know the difference in our systems. For example, that since they get to go to school for free, that basically all they ever get to do is go to class. They don't have the opportunity to do extracurricular things such as sports or joining clubs or even just enjoying work. For instance, my partner told me that she doesn't really work other than go to school, where on my end, at least, I work, go to school, and do a bunch of extra things. And it's almost like paying for college. I'm essentially paying for those extracurricular activities, which I never really thought about before.
I feel like I learned a lot. I learned a lot about French education that I never thought I would need to know. But I mean, it's really interesting. It's interesting to see how our different systems work, basically. And it was also really, really great to work with Lori. She was so helpful. She was so sweet, not at all how I thought she would be, because, I don't know, it's just one of those stereotypes that, like, Europeans don't like Americans. So I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to think that I'm this certain way, but she was honestly so sweet. And after our initial video chat, every time, like if I had extra questions, she was really helpful. She responded in a very timely manner, especially considering our time difference. Sometimes I feel like she was up till 3 a.m. I think the best thing I learned from the assignment was how to schedule. Basically, that sounds kind of dumb, but with the 6-hour time difference, it was really difficult to find a time that worked for both of us. And also just the assignment in general was really cool. I mean, I liked having to form a certain type of message, like something I learned at the end, and mine was basically like French students are pretty much like us. Like there's not really a difference. I mean, our education is a little different, but students were all the same.
My partner, Joya Defoe, I think is how you say her name, was really nice. And I was also matched with Emily Dietrich, who is from Western Pennsylvania, but lives in Portland, Oregon now. So kind of between having the two of them, we had pretty good conversations going back and forth. It was a little difficult with Joya's time zone in Paris, mine in Eastern time, and Emily in West Coast time. Just getting a different perspective on the world and kind of getting to talk about what's going on in France. And we talked a lot about the burning of Notre Dame. She was out there when it happened, and kind of her perspective of Europe, and she wants to go to America. And we kind of got to tell her like things like college football, like they don't have that at all.
I really enjoy meeting new people and learning more about just what makes them tick, their lifestyle, their view of the world, their opinions. And I also really think it's super interesting to talk to someone that's not from the United States and just say, so what do you think of the crazy stuff that we do?
The Global Learning Project was extremely enlightening for me. It broadened my perspective not only on life as a college student in France, but also on other various aspects of French culture in general. There were plenty of things I learned from talking to my partner that I wasn't aware of before and that I was surprised by. I think as Americans, we tend to have a rather ethnocentric mindset and typically forget that there are people in other places of the world that do things differently from us. And so this project definitely helped remind me of that.
I really enjoyed working with the French students. I learned so much. It was really interesting to see like their style and learn about the way that they do go through college over there. I thought it was really interesting. I also really enjoyed reading all the feature stories. I think it's so cool that people got to like connect and find a certain topic to talk about, like fashion, travel, and I thought those feature stories were a little more interesting to read than just like the schooling ones. I thought the unique topic ones, I loved reading about the fashion there. I loved like comparing American fashion, which is just like I wear leggings and a sweatshirt to class, or I wear like jeans and a t-shirt to class when I go, or I just sit on my couch and do my classes. So it was really interesting to like know that they actually dress like in a business casual kind of way. It made me kind of want to go out and buy like a trench coat because they all seem to be wearing those in their pictures. One thing that like, I definitely think you should keep this project because I think it's really cool. And when I told people that I was working with a French student and I was interviewing them for a feature story, they were like, oh my gosh, that is like the coolest writing project ever. Like, I wish I did that in college, or what class is that? I want to take it.
I feel like
I want to skip to this last person that I think really had something to say here.
When I first read the rubric for this assignment, I was really scared. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. I went to a small high school, and I went on to go to a small campus college. I think that in a lot of ways, I am privileged, and I live a very privileged life. It's not that I don't want to broaden my perspective, because I definitely do. In fact, I welcome it. But there was definitely fear. I'm not gonna lie. We initially bonded over things like anime and traveling, which I ended up writing my feature story on. But after that, we really started to ask each other questions about what it's like. And again, I was nervous because I was afraid that if we started to talk about our differences too much, that I might be offensive or be doing something wrong. But this assignment taught me that I don't think that we should be afraid of differences. In fact, I think that we should celebrate those differences because it's what makes us unique, and it's what helps to gain new perspectives and make new friends.
Okay, so I'm switching over to the video from the Nanterre students.
It was amazing.
Hello, we are 4 French students from Paris Nanterre University studying intercultural and international management. As a part of our communication course, we had a collaboration with American students from Penn State University. To me, this experience was really interesting because it gave me the opportunity to compare 2 different cultures, the American and the European one. So it was really interesting to write an article about American people.
This experience gave me the opportunity to meet 2 amazing people, Pierre and Brian. Their stories were interesting and passionate and very inspired me, and they gave me precious life advices.
For me, this collaboration course helped me enhance my English and my writing skills,
by writing an article in English. And I think it will be really useful for me for my work and my life in general.
To conclude, we think that this experience is a good way to help us enter professional life in which we will have to deal with American customers, clients, and well, a lot of cultures in our professional life. So this was really a good way to practice it.
I would like to say that it was a great opportunity to work with Penn State Beaver and its students. It was a very, very great opportunity, and we thank you for it. And we are glad it's going to be a part of the program, of the MDZ program in the future, because we think it's a great opportunity for communication students.
Yeah, it helps practice your oral and written English, and it's a great thing to put on your CV after. So personally, I really enjoyed the opportunity to talk and practice my oral English, and the opportunity to talk to a native speaker. What I really liked was writing an article in English, because that was the first time I was able to do that. The main difficulty for me was that Gabby, so one of the students I talked to, was sick. She had pneumonia, and I was sick too. So it was kind of hard to make the video call because we were not very able to talk. So what was interesting for me was to discover the difference between the culture, the US culture and the French culture. However, the difficulty was with the time difference.
For me, the good point is that Caroline was a really nice and motivated person. But the tricky part was the article itself, because it was the first time for me to write this kind of thing. So not so easy at first time.
I think this experience has been really interesting for us French students. We don't have the opportunity to have online classes here in France, so it was interesting to see how it works. I have worked with Gabrielle for my article, and she was super nice. We decided to focus on graduation ceremony, and I really loved to learn more about it, as my only experience with this event was in movies. So I am really glad I had the possibility to be part of this collaboration. The course gave me the opportunity to write for the web and get feedbacks on my writing skill. Both positive and negative feedback were interesting in order to progress and write a future great article. It allowed me to interact and exchange with American students by both sharing our experience in our country, our daily life, and our school life, and practice even more my English. It was a very interesting class because of the intercultural aspect. I learned a lot about the student life in the US, and thanks to this course, I learned some tools in order to write for the web, and I also learned how to write a future article.
It was amazing how an unknown person can be so close to you. The article I was writing about him helped me to understand my communication skills, and the article he wrote about me helped me to understand myself. I was almost crying reading his feedback at the Penn State University website. Alexei, if you hear me, thank you so much for this experience we had together, and I wish you good luck, and I hope this collaboration between two universities will continue, and other students of the Université Paris-Nanterre and the Penn State University will continue to work together. Thank you.
One of the things I really noticed about both the videos that they turned in and also their written feedback, to me, the American students got more from the intercultural experience from the exchange, and the French students got more from the writing in English, and being able to practice their English, which made a lot of sense because the French program was an intercultural trilingual program, and so they're used to speaking with and interacting with people from different countries. In a lot of cases with some of the Penn State students, they've never traveled internationally. Many of them don't travel much, even out of the state, so we started off with this goal of perspective taking, and I think that was really successful on the American side. On the French side, it's not as much of a need that they had, and so the benefit that they got was more from practicing their English and writing in English and writing an American style journalism. So the exposure to AP style. Gabby, why don't you jump in here, and then Fiona can wrap up and we can move to some questions.
When you started playing the video, I honestly had forgotten that I had pneumonia during the time this interaction was going on. Claire did as well. She was also very sick, and it ended up being this weird thing we bonded over because there is a 6-hour time difference. She didn't feel good and I didn't feel good either, so it was learning how to work together under these odd circumstances where you can barely hear me understand me in person, no less over a video, so we would text quite a bit. Claire and I had a mild rocky beginning with finding conversations and topics to talk about, but as we went on, we learned that we were not that different. Although I am in my undergrad and she was in her master's degree, we both had a 30-minute commute to school every day. So she told me about what she does on the train and how she does homework to pass her time. And I told her how I drive, how I drive 45 minutes to get to school. And she was amazed that I would drive in my car that long every single day for school. So finding these small cultural differences, yet similarities, really helped Claire and I to work together on this project. In addition to that, the other Penn State student we were working with is Nate Sharif. He and I are the managers of our student-run newspaper, and Claire really, really enjoyed that topic, and she was fascinated with the fact that we had a student-run newspaper that we ran, and we were able to say things against the school, even if we wanted. There was a lot of cultural differences, but at the end I found there were a lot more similarities of we are young people trying to meet other young people in our fields and trying to better ourselves through communication, through our writing, and getting to deal with language barriers, time differences, illnesses. You really get to know a person because you're both going through the same rut at the same time. You're both still students trying to figure out your schedule and get something submitted on time. That it really stripped back all the layers of projects and assignments to humanity, and we really got to know each other as people.
Gabby, I'm curious, because you were both sick, did you talk about the healthcare systems, the difference in the healthcare systems at all?
We did a little bit. Claire didn't want to go to a healthcare provider at the time just because she was so busy. She was doing her master's. She didn't want to take the time and not go to school or miss class to be sick. And I felt the same way. We talked about not wanting to miss college because it is so hard to catch back up, but we did not end up talking about the healthcare system all that much. We ended up talking about our childhood more than anything. Claire sent me a picture of her childhood house in her town of the streets that she'd walk when she was a kid and tell me the stories. And showing her my town of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is 2 hours from Beaver. She was really intrigued by the small town ideations that you see in movies that can be real. When I sent her pictures of my hometown that has oak-lined streets with trees and things along those lines. So I think we were both able to give each other a lot of perspective into the other culture of she's just very similar to myself, but a year older. And her parents, she showed me their little cottage they had in the rural areas. So I think we really just got to know each other as people. We tried to not avoid politics, but it just didn't come up per se because I wanted to get to know her and not Paris. If I wanted to learn Paris, I'll love to go there one day, but I really just wanted to get to know Claire as a person and as a student for this project.
I get to talk to Gabby all the time. Fiona, did you have any questions for Gabby?
I think Gabby has summed up really well the essence and the spirit of this project. I don't have questions, any further questions for you, Gabby, but it's been very interesting to because it's the first time that Gabby and I have met,
Yes.
albeit virtually. And I think it's inspiring what you've said, and this message, we're different, but basically we're the same. That's an interesting message for this generation, and I think can be put to be placed in the context of what we're all experiencing at the moment with this global situation. And so I think the sense of community and the fact that cultural differences are overridden by a lot of things, the fact that your generation, you have so many possibilities of communication at your fingertips that previous generations did not have. So no, I don't have extra questions for Gabby, but I just wanted to thank her. Shall I sum up about the lessons that we've drawn from this, John, because time's pushing on, and there have been a couple of questions. One of the comments we've had is that it's very interesting for you participants to hear about the cultural differences, and if I may, I might just refer to two cultural differences that we experienced, or I did. I'm Anglo-Saxon, but living and working in France with a majority of French students, even though we do also have a percentage of international students. And what was interesting is that despite the fact that my students are enrolled in an intercultural management program, there was a problem of linking theory with practice. And as John said in the perspective taking, the videos that you all just watched, the perspective taking in terms of the cultural differences were certainly voiced far more from the American side than from the French side. The French students insisted more on the skills that they'd gained and the opportunity of speaking English. And I was perhaps disappointed. John put it nicely and said perhaps they didn't need this cultural perspective taking as much, but I think they do. And what I'm going to concentrate on next year is really announcing clearer objectives. The fact that this is not only to gain skills in writing, digitally, writing for the web, learning to write a feature article, but also I'd like them to take into account their personal experiences through this exchange and link it to theory about intercultural management and intercultural communication differences that they have studied.